This is Empowered Human Academy. Welcome home.
Do we want to survive in the best way that we can with all of the tools and the healthy nutrition tools or physical activity or wellness, mental, anything like that? All of those tools, we have the choice of how we want to survive. And I think that nutrition is one of those key pieces.
This is about love. This is about light. This is about the idea that you have everything you will ever need.
And this life of yours, this is where you grow, you expand, and you remember who you really are.
I'm Abe.
I'm Isaac.
In Empowered Human Academy, we join with humans of all kinds to feel the inspiration that can only come with empowered living.
The stories you hear today are unique, but the energy you hear today belongs to you too. So, with hearts wide open, let's begin.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Empowered Humans Conversations podcast. My name is Abe.
I'm Isaac.
And today we have our good friend Taryn. She is a registered dietitian. And the reason why we invited her onto this podcast conversation is because Taryn and I actually worked together for 2 years after I started my Abe Minus 100 journey. And we'll go into that a bit later into the conversation. But thank you so much for joining us, Taryn. We're so excited to chat with you. And Isaac always starts off each conversation with a question.
The question is about how you self-identify, not necessarily how you'd introduce yourself at a conference or at dinner or anything, but when you're thinking about who you are to yourself, what words do you choose for who you are?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't think I've been asked it in that way before. So I guess when I think of myself or how I would introduce myself or identify as myself would be, just like a energetic, fun-loving female who's now a mom who, is just exploring life, missing sports. I'm so many things, I guess, on different levels.
Yeah.
Totally. I love how immediately we've got some things that sound like constants, like some identities and some words that sound like they apply to your timeline. Like what's in your adventure right now? Like what are you actively exploring?
Really new motherhood right now, I think is like the biggest thing in my life. My son will be 1 in 2 weeks. So it's been a super fun past year. Just getting to figure out what it's like to raise a human. And you think you have all these ideas of what that means. And then all of a sudden you're responsible for one and it's completely mind blowing. And so that's been quite a journey over the last year. And I'd say maybe the best one I've ever had yet.
Can you tell me why?
Little humans give you a whole different perspective on the world. And I think, he has taught me so much about myself and the world, even just being this small little creature that, can't walk or talk, that is 100% relying on me and, other mommy to raise him. But it's so cool because he teaches you patience and how to slow down in life. And I think, COVID definitely did that, but getting to be home with him for the past 6 to 8 months is just it's a different side of myself that I haven't seen or explored really before, of just a time to take deep breaths and be in the moment a lot more, because you don't get to make plans with a baby because they inevitably will change it. And so it's just, that part's just been really cool.
Yeah. So you're saying this is revealing like another expression of yourself. How does that fit in with all the other parts of you that maybe have been more familiar in previous years? How does it all fit together?
I feel like it's been a really good puzzle piece that's always been there, but that maybe I wasn't utilizing as much. And I think being able to slow down a little bit and think a little bit more about, what I'm going to do or things that I want to pursue instead of, before it was like, go, go, go. I want to do this. I want to do that. I've got a job. I'm playing sports. And, everything was really regimented, and when I'd get an idea, I would just kind of go for it. But this piece that the last year has brought into my life has been great because it's brought another like yin to my yang of a kind of slow down, learn to contemplate things a little bit, or then even slowing down enough just to see other things that maybe I was letting pass by me because I was too focused.
What have been some things that you have noticed that you might have missed before because of your go personality that you find good and pleasant in this past year?
Although it sounds odd, the quietness. And not that there's a whole lot of quiet with baby often, but yeah, but those early mornings of just sitting and noticing things that I wouldn't before. I can't even remember before having a baby ever just sitting in the morning or just taking a time to come into the day. Monday through Friday, it's getting up and going to work, and Saturdays it was going to the gym, and Sundays was chores or this or that. And now it's like, I love it because you just kind of get up and you roll slowly into the day, and like watching different sunrises and the, different time of year, depending when it is. And we go on morning walks, and it's just, it's quiet and it's different. And you can hear the coffee brewing for once, like just the tiny little simple things that were always there, but that I never had time to pay attention to.
That's really beautiful. I think this year has given a lot of people the time to be more introspective, and given that you are a new parent in the last year, I mean, knowing friends and family members who, wake up early with the baby and sit in the chair to feed them, and rocking chair to feed them, it takes a lot of time to really be present with them, which then I imagine you notice a lot more around you, and even as you kind of change as a person, right? Being a mom, and we've had conversations about that, just like how it's kind of crazy now, and in the best way, and it's teaching you so much. But going kind of forward into this like conversation about wellness, empowerment. Me and you worked together for the last, we've known each other for a couple of years, and you were with me in the beginning of my A minus 100 journey. And we actually talked every single day for around 2 years.
We sure did.
And other than Isaac, I don't know if anyone has ever done that. So I feel like we're pretty close now. So I really wanted to get you on here and chat about what does empowerment and what does empowerment look like in regards to food, and why it's so important, and what food does to our body, and how food has impacted you. So let's just first start off with asking, like, why are you a dietitian, and why are you passionate about it?
Yeah. And, as I think back to all of my schooling and kind of my journey, there was always this underlying theme for me of health and wellness. Everything sports, everything, physical activity, everything wellness was something that I was always kind of drawn to. Early on, I didn't even really know what a dietitian was. I knew that I wanted to be healthy. I knew that I was a competitive athlete. I knew that, I was going to play sports in college. And my first degree was in exercise sports science. And then I had this one specific professor who taught a nutrition class, and he, for whatever reason, just really, really drew me in. And it was his class that really kind of sparked the connection between food is health or food is medicine for me. And it's when I really started taking nutrition seriously as far as a competitive athlete at that point. So I was in college at that time. And it was Professor Scott Drummond, who was just amazing. And he really got me thinking about how can we become our best selves related to nutrition, and how does food fuel us, and how does it make us feel? And so it was really at that point that I started figuring out, oh my gosh, this could be a career, as he kind of started talking about like what a dietitian is and what a dietitian does and things like that. And from that point on, I mean, literally that day, I was like, I'm going to be a dietitian. That is literally what I'm going to do. And nothing stopped me. And that every choice that I made, and then going to get another degree started at that point, and just realizing how much I enjoyed nutrition. And I was never bored with it. Every nutrition class I went to, I was so pumped. I was like, oh my gosh, I got another class. I never skipped class. I was that crazy nerd that read extra books and podcasts, and, I just loved it. And I still do. It gets me excited to talk about it all the time. So I knew that I made the right decision in that aspect. And, I kind of never looked back. It's just, I found a way for nutrition and food to implement into almost all aspects of my life.
Oh, okay. Tell me more about that. You've already connected the dots explicitly between nutrition and like sports performance, but how, for people who are listening for whom this idea might be totally new, how does it apply to the rest of one's life?
Yeah, I think over time I've learned, and what I try to teach so much is that food really is medicine, and food is survival almost, in the fact that we have the choice of, how we want to survive. And I think making right choices with nutrition is huge. And I think no matter what aspect you are in your life, you have that choice. So whether you are a teenage athlete trying to get a scholarship, or you're a college athlete, or you're mid-20s, early 30s, and you want to run your first triathlon with your best girlfriends, or you're a new mom and you're trying to figure out how to lose baby weight, or you're middle age and you're trying to figure out how health and wellness can start making you feel better, so maybe you can keep up with grandkids, things like that. I think it's important for every cycle of life. And that's why I love, nutrition in general, because it can touch everyone.
That completely makes sense. I'm super struck by the line that you said, we get to choose how we survive. Why is that important? I don't think I've ever heard anyone use those exact words for it. So I want to hear from you. Like, how do you think about that question? Why is that valuable?
I think, the education around nutrition is empowering. And I think Abe can probably tell you a lot about that and his journey and just learning. And then we have a choice. Do we want to survive, in the best way that we can with all of the tools and the healthy nutrition tools, or physical activity, or wellness, mental, anything like that? All of those tools, we have the choice of how we want to survive. And I think that nutrition is one of those key pieces. And nutrition is for everyone. I don't think that there's a person out there that it's not important for. And so I guess that's kind of what I mean when we have the choice of how we want to survive. Is, do we want to use these tools? Is it important to us? For so many reasons.
Yeah, that makes sense. Can you talk to me about where people are at when they come to you for this sort of thing? And feel free to use this guy as an example if you want to, just because I got to see that story. But for somebody for whom nutrition is a totally new realm, for somebody who's just beginning to maybe get a glimmer of an idea that this might be relevant for them, how do you begin to introduce that value and start to teach them what that looks like for them?
A lot of people I work with, I get from all different walks of life. But everybody usually comes to me because there's something in their life that they're ready to change. And there's something in their life that they want to hold the key to better. And whether they realize it or not, and what I hope them realize is they just need the educational tools. And so I feel like nutrition is one of those things of, I'm not going to lead you to the water and tell you to drink it. I'm going to lead you to the water and show you how, and give you the opportunity to have those tools long-term. And so, a lot of the people I work with, they're looking for something different in their life. Whether, again, I work with a lot of athletes too, or CrossFit athletes of, I want to put on 10 pounds of muscle, or I want to lose weight, or I need to look good for a wedding, whatever it might be. But I always try to turn it into a little bit of a lifelong goal, because I really feel like making the right nutrition choices long-term is so beneficial. We can all have those short-term goals, right? So I'm getting married in a year and I want to look my best in a dress, or, a year from now, I want to be able to hike my first 14, or whatever it is. We can have short-term goals, but I love getting clients to the point where they feel like, no, I want to be in this for the long haul. Teach me something that I can do long-term. And Abe is really one of those perfect examples. And honestly, where I learned, as much as I taught you, Abe, I think you taught me a lot too, of how to meet somebody in the middle, or meet somebody where they're at, and figure out kind of those baby steps so that you can make it long-term, make it long-lasting.
Totally. I tell people that ask me how I started my health journey. I'm like, literally, you told me not to eat fries 6 times a week. That's it. That's where we started. You're like, you didn't try to change me right off the bat, and you never your approach wasn't to change me. It was to allow me to grow incrementally over time. Where one day I was like, oh, I don't need to eat fries at every single meal in order for my mind to think that it was a meal, which then leads to, less food addiction, which, I mean, we can talk about that too. And which then led to like better habits, which then led to 4 years later, almost, like I'm opting into a Whole30 for the fourth time. And I'm like actively always engaged with what I'm eating and how much I'm eating it. It's just like such a long-term sustainable way to approach things, which is great. Yeah. And let's talk about that. Let's talk about where do you see a lot of people beginning in their health journey in terms of food? Where are a lot of people kind of stuck that you feel like you see often with your clients, with maybe in your life in the past? Like, where do people get stuck in the beginning?
I think, there's kind of two different avenues. It's either people who have tried nothing and are just like, I'm fed up and it's time. Tell me anything and help me with anything. I'm just ready. Or I get some of the people who have tried everything in the book, but a lot of the things that they have tried aren't sustainable. And so I think a lot of the people I end up working with have tried so many things, and it's kind of reteaching nutrition education a little bit because, nutrition's everywhere. And I always say the hard thing about nutrition education is everybody's an expert, right? Everybody has a theory about nutrition. Everybody has some sort of background with it. Or my family does this, or I know this, or my friend lost weight like this. This diet's supposed to work. And so I think a lot of people come fed up because everything that they've tried maybe works for a small amount of time, but then those behaviors don't last because they never built a really good foundation. And so I try to wipe all of that clean and build a really good foundation. And I always tell clients when you come to me, I'm not going to be your quick fix. I am not going to give you something that you're going to get success in 60 days and you're going to walk away and everything's going to be fine for the rest of your life, because it's not real. We have to work on ourselves every single day, all the time. I tell athletes that. I'm like, you don't go to practice for 2 months and be like, great, we're good, and I can show up at every game and I'm going to be fine. Or we don't go to a job for just a month and be like, great, send me a paycheck for the rest of the year. We're fine. And the same thing with nutrition. There's not a quick fix. We're not just going to do something for 30 to 60 days and magically everything's going to be great. And so I try to help people understand that, because then I think when they're okay with it taking a little bit longer time, but the outcome's going to last so much longer, that's empowering for them. And then it's willing to be like, okay, I'm going to buckle down and let's go on this journey.
Totally.
It almost sounds like it's less of teaching people the mechanics of something, like the specifics, as much as teaching them how to have a relationship with it. What is, I mean, if those words have any bearing, great. If they don't, correct me, but what does it look like to bring somebody from a point of, like, I need to check these things off of the list to make sure that I am doing this correctly, to a place where the relationship is more intuitive, sustainable, something that doesn't feel like it's something that feels edifying instead of draining over time?
Yeah. I think it's baby steps, and it's meeting people where they're at. And I always say, let's start with 1 or 2 goals, because just as humans, when we're successful with something, we feel good about it. And it's like, great, I am really ready to rock the next goal. Whereas if we try to take too many things at once and maybe we're only successful with a few of them, it's a little bit like, that was hard, that was defeating, there's too many things on my plate. And so I think that's kind of where I start people, is like with Abe, let's just have French fries 3 to 4 days a week. Like, and I don't know what you thought at that point of like, that's it, lady? Like, I'm here for help and you're just telling me not to eat French fries a couple other days, but like knowing that I had a greater plan for you. But then all of a sudden you did it and you're like, wow, holy cow, I don't have to rely on this. And it's when it starts clicking, for the client, that it really starts working. And then it's like, great, let's add on another goal. Why don't you try to make 3 home meals this week? You can still eat out a couple times, but let's try to cook some home meals. And it's like, okay, I can totally do this. And when we start getting better at things, it's easier to kind of move on to the next goal. Now, if I would have met with you at the beginning, Abe, and said, okay, we're going to go on a Whole30. I need you to drink 100 ounces of water every day, and I need you to work out for 30 minutes. We may have lasted a couple weeks at most. And it would have been like, this is too much, because behavior changes don't happen like that. And when we have too many things that we're trying to change, it's overwhelming.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I want to know from you, actually, like, at what point did this start? Like, at what point did you realize this was something that you could keep doing?
It's a great question. I think it started when I don't know if there was like an inflection point in our relationship, but for those of you listening, I pay Taryn once a week to work with her every single day. And I think it was me really like putting my money where my mouth was, like, how serious am I to change my life? Because now I'm paying someone that I'm accountable to other than myself, that will help me get to the place where I want to be. So I think I don't know if there was a specific inflection point where I started feeling like understanding. I don't know. I don't know if there was a place where I felt like it was clicking, but it kind of gradually just started to click over time, because like you said, like I started achieving these like small things over the long period of time. And I look back and I'm like, holy shit, I don't need to eat fries. Literally, I was eating fries out like maybe 7 days a week, and like an ice cream 7 days a week. I really didn't have good habits with my food. And then I looked back at one point, I was like, oh shit, I've only eaten fries one time this week and I survived, and I actually had a great week of eating and I enjoyed myself. Or like I've lost weight, or I'm starting to become less inflamed, or whatever it is. That's answering your question. Does that answer your question?
Oh, that completely makes sense. Yeah, I got to witness all of this, and on a personal note, I'm very grateful to Taryn for the work. What lights you up about this kind of work, Taryn? Like, what is satisfying in this to you?
When other people light up, it lights me up. And even if it was small wins, I mean, using Abe as an example, like the tiniest wins make it worth it. Of like when you would wake up and you'd be like, oh my gosh, look how clear my face looks. And you're like, I mean, just small wins. Or you guys would maybe go to California or something and you're like, I could actually walk and hike. Like I walked 2 miles and I don't hurt. Like those are huge wins. Or when you first started cooking at home, or like even now when you send me pictures of your plate and it has fish on it, and I'm like, we got there. Like we did it.
Yeah, totally. By choice. Yeah.
Just the small wins like that. Like I think the everyday wins for people that are even small are magical. It doesn't have to be the huge big wins, because that's going to come. But it's those everyday things that make people sit up and smile and are like, yeah, this is worth doing.
And it empowers you to go on, because if you have wins every day and you're not just waiting for this, like, I'm at 250 pounds or I'm at 200 pounds, like that truly pumps you up, because like it propels you forward in such a powerful way. Yeah.
I want to rewind to something interesting that you said earlier about how everybody's an expert. And I'm personally curious about the relationship between authority and like self-empowerment. Can you talk to me about your perspective on that, whether it's in nutrition or otherwise, when there's so many people purporting to be authorities and people who actually are, and I don't know how you would make the distinction. What is the relationship between authority and empowerment?
Well, I mean, when I talk about everybody being an expert, it's, food is such a big part of our culture. And it can be a hurdle when I say everybody's an expert in nutrition, because you can get on Facebook or Google or turn on the news channel and there's always something going on about nutrition. No, Atkins is the best diet. No, the celery juice is the best diet. No, you should put cayenne pepper in your water and you'll magically lose weight. You should eat high fat. No, you should eat low fat. And everybody kind of comes in with, different ideas about what nutrition is. And that's why, studying nutrition is great, because it's always evolving and changing. And then I can kind of bring that to my clients. But it's a little bit, I shouldn't say it's hard. It's it's an obstacle that I love to help redirect people's nutrition education, because no matter what, almost 99% of the people I meet with always say, I heard this, I heard that, what do you think of this? And it's such a great platform to be able to teach. But, nutrition education is always evolving and changing. And what maybe I would have taught, had I been working with clients 15, 20 years ago, it's totally different now, which is why it's so cool. We always have to kind of keep up with our education, and things are evolving. And as we evolve as humans, so does our science. So does the way that we work with things. So that's kind of what I mean is, everybody comes in as an expert. Is there's so much information out there. How do you weed through what's good and what's not?
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. What is unchanging? If so much of it is evolving rapidly, what hasn't changed?
Behavior change. And that's why I like that to be the platform of everything that I teach, because regardless if, nutrition education changes. So it used to be low fat. Now we talk about, okay, maybe low fat wasn't the greatest idea. Maybe we were a little bit more worried about sugar, but regardless of what the specific change is, if we don't have a good sturdy base for behavior change or overcoming our own obstacles, we're going to fail at whatever we're working on per se. And so I think what's been steady is, as humans, we need to learn how to be consistent. We need to learn how to have fears. We need to learn how to overcome obstacles. And that could be with anything. It could be with a physical barrier. It could be nutrition. It could be health. It could be your job. It could be anything. And so, nutrition is so mentally based too. It's emotional. And so that's kind of the constant, is no matter how much science changes, how much nutrition education changes, I think that's a constant.
Mm-hmm. And I hear you, like what you're saying here lends some insight into what I heard you do a minute ago, which was kind of pull back from describing something as hard and then kind of reposition it as just like an obstacle to be navigated around. And I've heard you, just because from the next room, do this with Abe over the years, positioning something so that it's approachable. Can you talk to me about that process and how you think about how we model the obstacles or whatever that we set up for ourselves as we're learning how to make ourselves better and evolving that relationship with ourselves? Why is it important to position things purposefully?
I think, once we can change our mindset, and, Abe, I'm sure you're much better at speaking to this, but, once we can change our mindset to not think that something is so hard, but it's just a different type of obstacle, I think we can learn to deal with it a little bit better. So when somebody says like, there's no way, that's too hard, I can't do it. Well, maybe it's just a little bit different than something we've done before. And maybe we can't get 100%, but maybe we can get to 50%, and that's 50% better than where we were. Or maybe we can slice that goal in half and do really baby steps. But I think that's why I say, behavior change is so emotional. It's a lot of mental up and down. It's kind of a roller coaster ride, which Abe and I had a lot of those conversations of like feeling really great for 7 days. And then one day it's just like, this is tough, but it's changing the conversation that we have in our own head of this isn't that hard, or what's hard about it, or is it so hard that I can't overcome it? We're just kind of talking ourselves down. And so I try to implement that into even the most basics of nutrition. Like I might tell somebody like, you need to drink, it would be great if we could get, 100 ounces of water in a day. Oh my God, that's a ton. I'm not sure we can do that. Okay, well, what's hard about that? Well, I don't have a water bottle with me all the time. Okay, well, let's pick up a water bottle. What do you think would be helpful? Let's grab one from Amazon. What if we just start with, 2 of those a day? And it's like, oh, okay, that's actually not that hard. And so it's just reprogramming the conversations in our head for things that seem hard or scary, and not using some of the negative language around can't, too hard, that type of thing.
That makes sense. In my own life, I'll just offer this. In my own life, historically, I've almost kind of, like I've been so used to feeling bad about some things that I've pulled back into kind of a place of numbness. And so I'm not there anymore, but given that history, it's intriguing to watch to hear a conversation where so much of it is about like, what wins can we claim? How can we feel good? And how can we use that to encourage ourselves? Because for a long time, I didn't even know that feeling good about this stuff was important. And I was missing that like big, core of motivation.
Mhm.
Right. And you taught me a lot about that.
Mhm.
Like why is it important to feel good about your wins? Because this is something that I had to learn over time.
Yeah, I think it's important, and you can touch on this too, Taryn, with your clients. It's every win builds upon another win, and it gives you momentum to actually get excited about the things that you're doing versus beating yourself up over like not doing something or like not being like what's like hate begets hate and love begets love, right? So like it's and optimism and positivity begets optimism. Like if I'm saying I love you and like we're having a good time, like it's going to be hard for me to say like I'm mad at you, right? If we're having a good time, and if we're fighting, then it's just going to be, what do we want to perpetually create?
Yeah, that.
And that's like what I've done with going back to what you were saying, Taryn, like, learning your patterns. And I would call you sometimes and I would say like, Taryn, what the fuck? Like, I'm not where I want to be. Like, this is frustrating. It's taking a long time to change my body. How do I stay positive? I remember I was at a climbing gym and I called you and we talked for like 40 minutes and like, you just you realized that I was in like I went super hard in a non-sustainable way for 10 days and then I crashed. So you're like, okay, you've done this a few times. Okay, you helped me get back to a place of feeling good to then move on, right? I didn't quit. I didn't say, well, fuck it, I'm going to stop. You got me to a place that I was actually, you celebrated where I had been, where I'd come from. And then we planned a feel good next couple days. And we didn't even talk about what was going to happen a month from then. You said in the next couple days, how can we like get back on track? Right. It's this building of momentum. What kind of momentum do you want to build over time? So that way, when things do happen, which they do to all of us, what is the foundation that we're laying on? Right. And it's the foundation of good patterns, good eating patterns. Like there are plenty of times that I've texted you and I said, oh, well, I ate a pizza and margaritas and tacos and ice cream all in one night. You're like, okay, well, that's cool. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll get back on it tomorrow. Like there was no shame in it. Like there was 0% shame in any of the things that I've talked to you about in the 2+ years that we worked together, which then like built upon this confidence, this foundation of confidence that we've had like with yourself, with myself. That really helped. I don't know. Would you agree with that, Taryn?
Yeah. And it made me think of, something that I think is so important. And I hope that most of the people that I work with come out with an understanding of it, is that we're human. And I don't ever expect perfection. And I try to encourage people not to expect perfection from themselves either, because it's just not real. And so, all those small successes that they're having, we're going to hit a hard day, and to not completely fall off and give up because of one tiny little obstacle, because we aren't perfect. And so like I always talked about with you, Abe, living the 80-20 lifestyle, or the 90-10, depending where it's at, is we can't do something so strict for so long because we burn out and we fall apart and we feel bad about it and we start having bad self-talk, and it's just not sustainable. And so trying to teach people, we're not here for perfection. We're here for long-term health and wellness and longevity. And so, if 80 to 90% of the time you are rocking it, you're hitting your goals, you're feeling good. And then so what? 10 to 20% of the time you are enjoying life because you had friends over and it was wine night, or you're on vacation and you had a pizza. I think nutrition out there has made people feel like, well, if I don't do it perfect, I didn't do it at all. And it's just so wrong. And we've had a lot of those conversations too. You'd be like, oh my gosh, I just gave in and I had a hamburger. And it's like, so what? Like, looking back 3 years from now, did that hamburger matter? No. Totally. What you've learned out of it matters. Where you've come from matters. And so I think that's just really big, is we're not here to be perfect. We're here to be better.
Totally. And we talked about like a lot about having fun along the way, like switch it up and like try new like good grains and try new recipes, like, not to get bored, because I think a lot of people's misconception about food and healthy living is that it needs to be boring. I see a lot of plates that are like, I'm eating healthy and I'm eating raw broccoli and like unseasoned chicken breast. And that is like, that like really pisses me off. Cause I like internally, I'm like, that's a reason why I did not go after my health because I thought that I couldn't have fun along the way, which
Yeah.
like go ahead.
People always say like, oh, I don't want to do that. I can't, like, let's have a fun meal. And I'm like, what's a fun meal? Like, to me, like a big, awesome, healthy meal is fun. And so if we use the negative words of fun meal or bad meal, it really kind of messes with us. We know what are good foods and healthy foods, and we know what are bad foods. But if we continually say like, oh, I don't want that's not a fun meal. Like, it can't be fun and healthy at the same time. Well, it can. And that's the rewiring that we're working for.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the point where somebody sits down and like, that healthy meal I just made was awesome. Like, that was fun to me. I don't need a cheat meal. Like, that's what I want to rewire and help people get to, of you can have this lifestyle where you get a little of both, but you're not shaming yourself.
Totally.
Because you had something different that wasn't healthy.
Totally. And like, you did air quotes healthy. And like, I think even for me, changing the perspective of not even bad foods and good foods, I like think about it as like nutritiously dense foods that are going to help my body grow, or non-nutritionally dense foods. Like, they're not like, no food is bad. And you taught me that, like, you're like, pizza isn't inherently bad. Like, there's no, and that's the whole polar opposites, where like we're living in these polarized states where like, I have to go 100% of the time or I'm not going to be healthy, or all pizza's bad. No, pizza's not bad. If you have it in your 20% of, times that you eat, that's not a bad thing. Now, everything in moderation, they say, but like, I think of the meals that we've eaten in the last 3 years, and they've been incredible. And most of them have been nutritiously dense. I made an incredible chopped salad today with a whole bunch of vegetables, some Whole30 compliant sausage, some spicy olive oil that was Whole30. And it tasted like better than like most restaurant meals because it wasn't greasy. It didn't leave me bloated, and I felt full. So just like rewiring this definition of what health means is really empowering, because then I'm like, oh, it doesn't need to be this bland, boring shit. And actually eating healthy and being healthy is actually really fun and really enjoyable. Speaking of fun and enjoyable, go ahead.
It just, like, when you get people on the other side, they say exactly that. Like, yeah. Oh my gosh, I didn't know what it felt like to feel this good. And I didn't know that food actually tasted this good. You just have to like almost finally cross the bridge, and you're like, this is what you guys have been talking about. Totally. It feels so good.
And you can't, and it takes everyone a different amount of time, and everyone has a different relationship to their timeline, and even like the amount that they feel that. Cause sometimes I do know that, but like this summer, I mean, I went off the deep end a little bit, but like that always like guides me back to like what I know and what I actually like to feel. And that's why I love Whole30, because it's a reset to actually remind you that like, okay, you actually can feel good with the foods that you're eating.
And taking this wide, like this, coming from my background, all of this applies to things other than food as well. Mm-hmm. Like, once I figured out that I could feel good about, I'm going super wide, like life itself. Once I figured out that I can actually like be happy on a day-to-day basis, you can't, I mean, you can slip back, like you said, like your food has been different this summer a little bit. And I've had places where I've slipped back as well. But once you realize how good your life can be, once you start making choices that are good for you, that's not something that you ever can really forget, I don't think.
Well, and even the ebb and flows become less dramatic, because it's like, ooh, what was off the wagon for me this summer is totally different than what it was 4 years ago. Like, truly, I still had I still intermittent fast. I drink my water. Like, one meal would be, like a salad or a nice healthy meal. And then the other would be like pizza and wine, whatever. But like before, it'd be like ice cream, all these things just piling upon one another. I want to talk about burnout a bit, because that's a huge thing in the kind of wellness community. And what I see a lot of clients, and not clients, but just people in general, they struggle with that. And what is burnout? How does it look like in your life? What does it look like in your clients? And how do we overcome burnout?
I think, that's kind of like the big theme of things I think I've been describing as we've kind of talked here, is burnout is, especially when we're trying to do behavior change and, really talking about health and wellness, when we try to go 100%, when we expect too much of ourselves all at once, as humans, we're bound to burn out. You can only go so hard, so fast, for so long. And so that's really the whole stepping period of we change one behavior at a time and we make something sustainable. And then all of a sudden you look 2 years back and you're like, wow, look at all the changes I've made. Look where I've come and I'm not burnt out. It's almost like I try to relate it to like climbing a 14er. You can't sprint up a 14er. Well, maybe there's some crazy people that can, but most of us can't just sprint up a 14er. We're going to fatigue and burn out and be like, I don't even want to go the rest of the way. I'm exhausted. But if we just put one foot in front of the other and you keep going, and then all of a sudden you look back and you've reached the peak and you're like, wow, look how far I've come. And I made it sustainable because I didn't try to sprint. I took one step at a time. I took breaks when I needed to, which is important. You know, I maybe took a different course because this course was blocked and I had to take a different path to the top. We reach it. And so I think it's so important. You know, that's why I always tell people I'm not going to get you a dramatic result right away because one, you'll burn out potentially, and two, it's just not long lasting. And so we have to just be a little bit more gentle with ourselves, that we can still reach our goal, but potentially in a much healthier and better way.
Mm-hmm. And we're talking to you today because I truly believe that food is an incredible tool for empowerment, especially living like a really holistic, powerful, strong life. And I'm still learning that every day, and I'm still experimenting, right? The journey never ends. Where do you see, speaking of burnout, where do you see people, what kind of habits or what habits or patterns that you see in your own past experience? It can be with us, with me and you, or your other clients where you see people like burning out. Just some kind of, so people can understand like what red flags of burnout are, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I would say things like just learning to be consistent in a healthy way. So if we can set, consistent patterns and make something doable in our life, we're less likely to have burnout. So what I mean, for an example by that, is one thing that I always teach clients at the beginning is like a basic meal planning. So, learn to write out your meals, learn how to grocery shop, learn how to have less waste. And as we learn more kind of like consistent behavior changes, we'll have less burnout compared to, somebody who maybe has done nothing and all of a sudden wants to go from eating out 5 days a week to cooking at home 7 days a week, having to all of a sudden learn how to grocery shop for every meal, cooking every meal at home. It's becoming stressful instead of exciting. So if we're making a behavior change that is so stressful that you just wake up and you dread what you have to do, we're doing something wrong.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That makes sense. Yeah. How we've covered a lot of things here, and it's easy to see your enthusiasm for the subject, and the way that you talk about it so easily tells me that you're very, like, you have a good relationship with it. How much of this have you kind of always known, and how much of this is something that you've like had to work hard to learn?
I would say, naturally there's always been something in my life since I was young that drew me towards this. Mm-hmm. I came from a family that food was super important, but so was health and nutrition. And so it was just kind of taught early on, where it wasn't something that I had to, unteach really bad habits. But just like everyone else, I think I go through the same periods of having to teach myself, just like I teach others. And so there's been periods where it's way harder to follow through. And I kind of have to go back to basics and, being like, okay, don't do what I say and not what I do. I got to follow my own advice type of thing, and taking a step back. And I've had to learn a lot along the way, and all the different nutrition education and courses I've had, and becoming a dietitian and clinical hours and things like that. And I never stop learning. I mean, I'm still surprised some days. I'm like, oh my gosh, I never knew this, and this is so exciting. But it's an always evolving area. And even though I feel like health and nutrition is ingrained in me, I still have to use all the same tools that I teach people because I want it to be long lasting. People always said to me when I was pregnant, oh my gosh, you're eating for two, eat whatever you want. Like, eat away, this is so great. But it's, that's not the case. And were there days where I'm like, this is awesome. Like, forget about it. I'm a growing human. I'm going to eat whatever I want and it doesn't matter. But no, it does matter. Okay, day at a time, you're growing a human. You want him to have the best chance possible to, and really kind of like sticking to your guns, because I knew long term it was what was going to be best. And so I always like to tell people, even though I teach nutrition and that I'm in the health and wellness industry, some days it's just as hard for me as it is, everybody else. And so I always try to take my own advice too.
Love that. Speaking of kind of the industry, and your talk about things that you are learning and you're excited about, I have kind of a two-prong question. The first one is, what are some misconceptions about food, specific food, that are kind of like myths that you kind of want to debunk? And then two, the second question is, what is a new exciting development that you're like excited about as it pertains to health?
So I think to your first question, and there might be a lot of people out there who disagree with me, but one of the biggest things that I think there's a misconception with is bad foods and good foods. And this is a little bit about what we were kind of talking about, but there's not any bad food. There is, like a Mountain Dew, I don't feel like is a great choice. It's not a good food, but in general, any food that we eat, as long as we can eat it in a certain way and fuel our body as best. And Abe, you like literally nailed it on the head earlier, and I love that you have learned the language. Is there's a difference between nutrient dense and just calorie dense. And so trying to teach people that there's not inherently really bad foods, it's how we incorporate them into our diet on an everyday basis. So are there things at McDonald's that aren't the greatest for us? Sure. And if you're eating it every day, that's inherently not good for your body. But just because you have a hamburger and French fries once isn't inherently bad, and it's not an awful food. It's not the most nutrient dense food out there. And so, people always come and they're like, oh, I follow paleo because rice is really bad for you. Well, is it really bad for you? Or maybe it just doesn't fit into your lifestyle right now, which is great. Or maybe it doesn't fit into your goals right now, which is great. But we shouldn't shame the other people that it actually does fit into their lifestyle. And so I get a lot of that of like, oh my gosh, no, that's a really bad food. I can't have that in my diet. It's not inherently bad. It might just not fit with your goals right now. And maybe you'll come back to it one day. And so I think there's really this misperception with all the different diets out there that certain foods are just really bad and we have to stay away from that. And it's just not true. And, different foods can fit into different people's lives. Like I work with athletes who have to eat 4,000 to 5,000 calories a day. If you're telling me that we're going to meet our calorie and nutrition goals with like vegetables and a chicken breast, it's not going to happen. So it's like, no, that box of pasta is actually really good for you. Please eat it, type of thing. And so that was kind of a long out drawn answer to your question. But that's just kind of one of those big picture misconceptions, that sometimes really bothers me in the nutrition community, is like a lot of this food shaming or, this is a terrible food. Nobody should eat it. It's just different depending who you are and what your goals are.
And then an exciting new development about nutrition that you're like curious about, excited about, you think people should know about?
Man, to nail down something specifically, one thing which I think there's a lot, because I'm very research-based, like I like the scientific journals. I feel like if we're going to recommend something, it should be evidence-based. And that just comes from working clinically as well too. And there's so much out there about intermittent fasting, right? And you can pull it up and read a million different articles, but there actually hasn't been that many research studies, and there's been a good handful over the past couple years. And so I'm really excited to kind of sit down and dig through some of that evidence and what different populations found and outcomes, because even as great as I think it can be used, and I use it with a lot of my clients, like I want to really read some of the great research that's coming out with it in different clinical trials, which I think is cool.
And like you said, like nutrition and all of that is ever changing, and we're learning more because we're evolving as humans, and may we always be learning and on this sustainable path of health and empowerment. And I love that you have taught me to take control of the things that make me feel good. And it's what you said in the beginning of our conversation, how you can choose how you want to survive. And I choose to survive by eating really well and feeling good, and as best as I can, because I know what it feels like to not feel good, right? And you just can't go back. So we have 2 final questions. Isaac, would you mind asking her one of them?
Final question number 1. What does an empowered Taryn look like?
An empowered Taryn, to me right now, looks like somebody who has energy to wake up every day, who's excited, to show her son the world that's out there, to be, the healthiest person that I can be, just to have energy to enjoy the world. Like, to me, feeling empowered is just feeling good that I can get out there and explore and teach my son things and teach my clients things and be with my family. And, maybe that definition has changed for me over the past several years, but right now, like, that's when I feel my best, is just teaching others and getting, to show this new little human I'm raising the world.
That is beautiful.
I love that. Final question. What do you know for sure?
Nothing.
Ooh.
I mean, and I say that quickly, but it's almost true. I don't know anything for sure. And that's why life is so cool. Because we're going to learn every day. And if I can keep myself open enough to know that maybe nothing's for sure, I'm always going to learn something new. And I don't think I know anything for sure. Anything could change at a moment. You can learn something different. Something could change your life forever. I don't know anything for sure.
Wow.
This smile on my face is very genuine. That's an amazing answer. I love that, because you talk so much about, not so much, but like, this has all been about things that you're teaching people, right? And you talk about how a large part of your empowerment is in teaching, like showing your son the world, teaching your clients and your clinical practice and all of this. And I love that for you, that you also hold learning as dearly. It sounds like that's so core to your worldview. That's super cool.
Yeah, Taryn. Yeah, it's really powerful. And we could talk to you for hours, of course, and we're wrapping up here. So truly, like, Taryn has brought me to a place where I feel confident in what I'm eating and why it's important. And it's been truly a life-changing experience working with you and being your friend. And I remember when I texted you this past January saying, hey, I think I'm ready to let go of coaching for now if I feel like I need to, and I'll come back. And you said, you have the wings to fly now. And like, I cried. I think I cried for like 10 minutes because I started my health journey not knowing anything, like truly anything about food, healthy foods, what it felt like to feel good. Like, truly, it's been such a transformational experience for me working with you and my whole A-100 journey. So just really appreciate you, Taryn. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. We hope to have you back on the podcast one day talking all of food and nutrition.
Yes.
I could talk about this for hours. It excites me. So thank you so much for your time. We love you. And thanks for being you.
Thank you, guys. Love you always.
Thank you.
Talk soon.
Bye.
This podcast is the work of Lightward, our company, named for that toward the light direction which informs every single thing that we do, including money, which means, like everything else, the way we earn revenue is not based on industry norms. It's based on what feels deeply right and aligned by passing through the door that feels like it has more behind it, not less. And the way we keep this podcast going is all Lightward. It's pay what feels good. It's an exchange of value between you and us. We're keeping conventional podcast advertising totally out of this. And here's how Pay What Feels Good works. We give you this episode because it feels good to do so. And you consider, honestly, what number of dollars this episode is genuinely worth to you. I do not care if that's $3, $1,000, or literally $0 and a heart emoji, as long as that trade genuinely makes your day better. And the energy there is the entire point. That is what we're building our business on. No advertisers, no selling your attention, just you and us, trading value in a way that builds us both up. So whatever the number, when you're done listening, head to empoweredhumanacademy.com and hit the pay what feels good button. We use this policy across all of our company's work, and I'm really excited to bring it here to the world of podcasts. This is us voting for the world we want to see. Thank you for being here.